Here we are again, guys, with another game to scratch off the list. I did a review of the first game not long ago. You can find that in the description down below. And that game was an amazing experience. But will this game hold up to its predecessor's standard? And is it worth your time in 2023? Let's find out. The game we are talking about is Subnautica Below Zero. This game was also released as an early access, therefore I did not play through it since I want to experience the game when it's fully released. Subnautica Below Zero was released as early access in January 2019 for macOS, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Windows, Xbox One, and Xbox Series XS. And the 14th of May 2021, the full game was released. The game was both developed and published by Unknown World Entertainment. As always, I will start by introducing the beginning of the story for people that have yet experienced it and that don't care for spoilers. If you care for spoilers, please move to the timestamp below. The game starts with our protagonist Robin sitting inside the space pod located in the cockpit of the spaceship that's orbiting the planet 4546b. A man named Cal, who is piloting the ship, expresses his concern for her as we reach the drop zone. Robin responds saying that she needs to know what happened to her sister Sam and that the research is too important. As they launch, we can see a meteor storm outside of the cockpit, which Robin will use as a cover to conceal her landing from Altera's surveillance. While following behind a meteor, it breaks, causing the pod to shake and eventually crash land on the planet's surface. We wake up only to see our pod on fire. We manage to kick down the pod door and escape before it explodes. And this is where our story begins. Right at the start of this game, you feel nostalgic and pumped to go out in the world and discover every single part of this game, just like you did in the original, with the exception of pissing your wetsuit at every encounter and sound like you did in the original. The game pretty much starts the same as the original, but with different cutscenes, of course. You start with some food, water, and flares that you gather at the crash site, and then you head straight to the drop pod and start collecting all the materials you need to build your arsenal of tools that will help you through your journey. All the tools from the original Subnautica are in Below Zero except for the stasis rifle and repulsion cannon, which was cut from the game for unknown reasons. Probably because they were very powerful against every enemy and it made the game too easy, but that's just me thinking out loud. We also have 4 new tools: the mineral detector, spy penguin, the tether tool, and the thumper. The mineral detector, as the name says, detects different minerals. The spy penguin helps you to get into tight spaces on land that we can't reach. The tether tool is so you can teleport from any location to the sea truck module, and the thumper is a tool that makes thumping noises to confuse predators on land. I built all the tools and used them, but ended up using the essential tools like the scanner, sea glider, building tool, the plasma cutter, and repair tool for most of the game. It felt just like when you played Subnautica for the first time, and I loved it. We also have 2 new vehicles, which are the sea truck, and this is supposed to be the replacement for the sea moth in the original game, the prawn suit, and the snow fox, and that's it. No Cyclops. The sea truck is like a mix between the sea moth and the Cyclops. Instead of having a big ship where you can build whatever you want, you have modules that are pre-made compartments that you can stick to your sea truck, like a sleeping module or a crafting module, making you being able to craft or sleep while traveling. I need to say that I did not enjoy the sea truck as much as I would like to. First, it feels very slow, and for some reason it feels like going backwards is faster than going forward. And sure, you can add as many modules as you want, but mobility and speed will suffer from it. I had 4 modules, and let me tell you, mobility suffers hard from it. You will bump into everything, so the only time you use this is if you need extra space when scavenging for minerals. If we could have built a compartment where we could decide what we wanted in it, would have been more satisfying in my opinion, and imagine how cool it would be if you could build like a traveling sea base. I can already see all the images of people building the biggest sea truck or the most efficient sea truck. Sure, we would still have the speed and mobility problem, but maybe they could have added a stronger engine? And why did they remove sonar? I don't know how many times I wanted to use a sonar in the sea truck so I didn't have to get out of the sea truck to check my sea glider map so I didn't miss any paths and tunnels. And while we're at the topic of vehicles, why not talk about the prawn suit? And to be honest, the prawn suit has no use in this game except for mining minerals. This is what I loved in the original game. The sea mod could go as deep as 900 meters with MK3 upgrade, which is pretty deep, but if you wanted to finish the story, the sea mod wouldn't cut it since you needed to go deeper than 900 meters. So you had to get the prawn suit that could go as deep as 1700 meters with upgrades, therefore making it a necessity to craft. But in this game, there is no use for the prawn suit. The sea truck could go as deep as 1000 meters and the prawn suit can go 1100 with upgrades. Why would you craft a prawn suit if you can almost go as deep with the sea truck that has better mobility and higher speed? And then we had the Snow Fox. When I saw the trailer for Below Zero, I thought that the Snow Fox looked so cool and was really looking forward to using it. I gathered the material and scanned all the parts I needed, and finally I built it. And man, was I disappointed. The mobility of the Snow Fox just felt weird and turning it was so slow. I used it once and then it fell through the ground and I sent a bug report to the devs and that was the Snow Fox for me. It was fun building and checking out the different compartments of the sea truck, but after many hours of searching for more upgrades but not finding any, I checked online what upgrades are available and after that I just stopped looking for them at all since I didn't need them except for the defense upgrade and depth upgrade. I think that the vehicles in this game was a little thin when it came to upgrades, but I did have fun with them in the beginning when everything was new and very interesting, but the fact that the mobility and speed suffered so much from adding modules and that the prawn suit really wasn't needed that much and the Snow Fox not being very foxy at all, it just felt flat for me in the end. Moving on, how is the base building in this game, you ask? Well, it is still enjoyable, and this time around I built everything so I could test it all out. So we basically have all the same buildings as in the original. I think they did move some of the items from Below Zero to the original game after Below Zero was released. Unlike I did in the original, I wanted to build everything I could and test it out. So we have a few new buildings in this game, like the dock for the sea truck. I thought it was a great addition and I just love to dock in this game. All of the buildings have their own use and there is no building that felt unnecessary to build, but I wish that there were more buildings than we got and more upgrades. Since this game has a lot to do with exploration due to you trying to find every piece of equipment that can ease your journey forward, I felt that in this game you didn't explore as much as in the original, but that might be because of the map being more compact and smaller. Let's talk about the defense upgrade for the sea truck. The defense upgrade sends out a shockwave that will deter any hostile enemy, including Leviathans, which is kinda nice, since there are only 3 hostile Leviathans and one of them you might never see, since it's in a place you never need to go. I know we didn't have that many different species of the Leviathans in the original, but it felt like they were everywhere and you constantly had to listen for them, which added some sense of danger in the world. But in Below Zero you never feel scared, since you rarely ever hear or see the Leviathans at all. And with the defense upgrade, the fear of facing a Leviathan was not there at all. Maybe I'm being too hard on the game, but man, it almost felt like they ran out of ideas for building this world. I'm not craving this game to be a horror game. I have to compare it to its predecessor, and in that game, I was scared almost every time I got into a new biome, since I knew there are big things in the waters that can hurt you, or in the worst cases end you. Just hearing the damn thing made me shit myself. But in Below Zero, you just weren't scared at all, except for in the beginning before you discovered what dangers this underwater world had to offer, and it kinda killed the atmosphere for me a little, since I didn't have to care for any creatures while traveling, since traveling in this game almost felt like playing Euro Truck Simulator underwater, where instead of cars on the road we had creature, and if you bumped into them you got a ticket and moved on. The map feels smaller than the original, and after checking online I can confirm that my feelings were correct, and I can understand why they made it smaller, since we didn't have the Cyclops and didn't need all the open spaces like in Subnautica, and also that we now spend more time on land than in the original. But the different explanations I've seen online where people say things like original Subnautica had more empty spaces than Below Zero. This is in a way true, but that was probably to be able to use the Cyclops in the game, and I think the better word is open spaces than empty spaces. But I think there were more interesting places in Subnautica than Below Zero in my opinion. Not saying that there weren't any interesting places in this game. There were cool cave systems that you could explore, and in one particular that caught my eye over how beautiful it was. Overall, I feel that the atmosphere got hurt when they removed the sense of danger, and you discovered a lot of the map very quickly, which made me not care so much for exploring, except for finding more blueprints and data pads. When it comes to the interface of Below Zero, it's the same as the original, and there's really not much more to say about that, except for something that bothered me a whole lot. I love that you can pin items in this game, so you don't have to fiddle through the interface to check what you need for everything you want to build. That is awesome and all, but when you pin something and build it, the pin is still there, so you have to go into the interface and fiddle around anyway and go through everything you pinned and unpin it manually instead of it being automatically unpinned when you build the item. But Ferret, you can press unpin all in the interface. Yes, I know, and that would have been great if I only pinned stuff that I could build right now. I pinned everything I wanted to build, both things that I could build straight away, but some of them I needed to go out and collect the materials for. I don't know how many times I scrolled through the crafting interface to unpin things. We had this in the original too, but since it was an older game, I let that slide, but this was released in 2021. Is it just me that is bothered by this? I'm always trying to make my videos as spoiler-free as possible, but this is where I have to add some spoilers about the characters in the game. So if you don't want to hear this, I suggest you skip to this timestamp below. So in the original game, we got to know the story through listening or reading data pads, and there was no interaction with any human NPCs, but in Below Zero, we actually have two NPCs, Margaret and Alan. Margaret was a highly experienced mercenary tasked to protect the Degasi from pirates. The Degasi crashed on planet 4546b a decade prior to the events of Subnautica, so Margaret has been here for some time. It was interesting to see her, and you will recognize her voice if you played Subnautica and found the different data pads in the world. In this game, we get to see her, and when I did, I thought that, wow, we get to know more about her, but it all falls short with you doing one thing for her and getting almost non-important information about your sister, and then she is forgotten. It feels like she didn't need to be in the game at all. The better way would have been if she died a hero in the first game, or that she did something in this game that had meaning, but no. Alan is one of the architects, and when the Kara broke out, his body was destroyed and his mind was stored away. We get a distress signal when traveling deeper in one of the starting areas, and then we find some alien underground cave where Alan's mind is stored. He asked us if we could help him store his mind in our datapad, and we accept, but instead of being transferred to the datapad, he stores himself in our head, and now we have an alien talking to us in our head. He tells us about the different artifacts that can help him create a new body where his mind can be stored. I think the interaction between Alan and Robin are interesting, but few. He tells us about the artifact's location when we get close to one, and sometimes they just talk about how humans work and how architects are different, which I enjoyed since I wanted to know more about their species and what happened on planet 4546b and why they were there. I enjoyed Alan's story, but I wish they talked a little bit more during our travels. So what do I think about the story in this game? And my answer is this. I liked it in the beginning, but as we moved along and got to the end, it felt like we had more questions than answers. The whole plot circles around Robin's sister Sam. When we find out what happened, the investigation abruptly stopped and we move on. I didn't dislike the story, it just felt like it wasn't all there, or like a big piece was cut out. It was interesting enough for me to keep going, And for what it's worth, I still enjoyed how the game ended. Yeah, I know, it feels like I hate the game, but no, I don't. I had a lot of fun collecting materials, building my base, exploring the world, both on land and underwater, but there were a lot of things that I also didn't like and enjoyed, like the sea truck and how it worked with the multiple modules, the mobility penalty, which is logic, but they could have added some kind of upgradable engine that could carry a heavier load, the prawn suit that I felt wasn't at all necessary in the game, the snow fox that felt like driving a small tank, no sonar for deeper cave exploration with the sea truck, and that danger isn't something you had to worry about in this game, which in my opinion took a chunk of the atmosphere we felt in the original, but I still had fun for the most part in this journey. My final verdict for Subnautica Below Zero will be a 7 out of 10. It is an average game that unfortunately doesn't live up to its predecessor Subnautica, but this doesn't mean that this game isn't worth your time. If you are looking for more Subnautica, this game delivers that, but in a smaller, less mysterious package than the original, but I still feel that the game is worth playing and experience. Well, that is it for this time guys, and I hope that you enjoyed this review. If you did, check out my other reviews, stay tuned for there will be a lot more of this in the future. And remember, life is too short to play bad games. Let me help you find the best. See you guys.